Shalom, all praises, blessings, glories, and honors to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Racha, Kodash. Double honors to my apostles and bishop elders of Great Millstone, who have taught me this truth, as well of men of like mind. Shalom wa chasad, which means peace and mercy, to the elect of the nation of Israel, whom are you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native American Indians, and Israelite foreigners of the seed line of our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I'm scattered here in America, which is Babylon the Great, and abroad. To you I say Shalom, and Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Ratazah. This lesson is edifying and informative. Joel chapter 3, verse 9. Proclaim ye this among the Gentiles. Prepare war. Wake up the mighty men. Let all the men of war draw near. Let them come up. In the news from the Sputnik, U.S. resumes large-scale production of plutonium pits for nukes. During the Cold War, the U.S. produced thousands of plutonium pit detonators at the Rocky Flats plant in Colorado. Production halted in 1989 after the FBI and the EPA uncovered massive violations of environmental regulations. A small handful of pits have since been produced at the Los Alamos National Laboratory in New Mexico. The United States will resume the large-scale production of plutonium pit. The detonators used in nuclear weapons. Remember, nuclear bombs, also known as hydrogen bombs, are different, far different in fact, than atomic bombs. An example or examples of atomic warheads are the Little Man and Fat Boy atomic bombs that were detonated over Hiroshima and Nagasaki during World War II. And then an example of a nuclear bomb or an hydrogen bomb was the Tsar bomb that had been detonated by the Soviet. It had a yield of 50 megatons of TNT, with its maximum being about 101 megatons of TNT approximately. Okay? It reads on to say the National Nuclear Security Administration, NNSA, a sub-agency of the Department of Energy responsible for nuclear weapons, has announced in a new report to Congress, the NNSA indicated that its 2023 stockpile, stewardship, and management plan includes resources to ramp up plutonium pit production to 80 units per year, in accordance with approval received in 2021 to reestablish, for the first time since the early 1990s, the capability to produce war reserve plutonium pits to ensure the U.S. nuclear deterrent remains safe. And that is their excuse, to make sure that the nuclear deterrent for the U.S. remains safe, secure, reliable, and effective now and in the future. Why? Because they know that war is inevitable. They know that war is certainly around the corner, because again, as it is written here in the book of Joel, the 3rd chapter, the 9th verse, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles. The Gentiles are the heathen nations, and the Lord has been putting it into the hearts of the kings and the military leaders of the Gentile nations to prepare war. Because according to Ecclesiastes, the 3rd chapter, we are in a season of war. For as it is written, to everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war, a time of peace. And we are certainly in a time of war and in a time of hate, and not in a time of love, nor in a time of peace. And there's a reason why these nations have been preparing for war. And what war? The third world's woe, which cometh quickly, according to Revelation, the 11th chapter, the 14th verse. A war that will be fought with burning and fuel of fire, according to Isaiah chapter 9, verse 5. But before this war happens, the MOTB, which is the RFID microchip, also known as the NFC chip implant in Europe, also known as the biochip, the word bio means alive or living, also known as the brain chip implant, i.e. Elon Musk's Neuralink, will and must be first mandated globally. And after that happens, that is when the third world's woe will begin by reason of the least of the flock, which is the state of Israel, drawing America, Babylon the Great, out into the Middle East, into the Arabian Peninsula, okay, into the Valley of Decision over there. Because Israel is going to do something to provoke Iran and eventually attack Iran. And this will cause Iran to retaliate, and then the U.S. will become a guard into Israel. And then Russia, or Ashar, the head prince, Gog and Magog, will then become a guard unto Iran. Okay? So it's a process. Again, it reads, prepare war, wake up the mighty men. Let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords, and your pruning hooks into spears. Plowshares and pruning hooks are instruments of agriculture. Swords and spears are instruments of cruelty. This is to say that these nations will take their economic wealth and use them towards the research, development, and enhancements / optimizations of weapons of mass destruction, primarily ICBM nuclear missiles, which, according to Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 25, are the weapons of the Lord's indignation. Okay? Let the weak say, I am strong. So weak nations such as North Korea, Iran, which now possess nuclear capabilities, are now boasting before the world and before their competitors, before their enemies, their adversaries, that they are now strong. Okay? And this is an example of a nation beating its plowshares into swords and its pruning hooks into spears, producing anything that will forward the creation or the enhancements of nuclear missiles. It reads on to say plutonium pits, also known as plutonium cores, are a key component in both tactical and strategic nuclear weapons, serving as a trigger, setting off a nuclear reaction that creates a large secondary explosion of the main nuclear payload. Because there are two reactions. You have fission and fusion. The 80 pits per year will be produced jointly at Los Alamos, the birthplace of the American nuclear bomb, and the Savannah River site. They're probably referring to Minuteman, the Minuteman nuclear bomb. Augusta, Georgia, if my memory serves me correct, 30 cores will be produced at the former and 50 at the later by repurposing an existing facility to meet their manufacturing capacity. Production is expected to ramp up gradually, with none less than 10 pits expected in 2024, 20 in 2025, 30 in 2026, and not less than 80 per year from 2030 onward. The inward thought is that their house shall continue forever. The Lord will only continue to hasten the days. So expect these things to just spike in production, unprecedentedly, suddenly. The NNSA report also shed light on a number of other nuclear weapons-related plans, including a program to extend the service life of the B-61 Mod 12 nukes, which the U.S. has stockpiled at home and across half a dozen sites abroad to address issues related to multiple components that are nearing end of life, as well as military requirements for reliability, service life, field maintenance, safety, and use control. The report highlighted that the total estimated cost of the program has jumped from $8.3 billion to $9.6 billion. The new information about the production of new plutonium cores combined with the modernization of stockpiled weapons comes amid the U.S. ongoing modernization of its nuclear triad, a program expected to cost taxpayers up to $1.5 trillion over the next 30 years. While scientists at Los Alamos built 31 plutonium pits between 2007 and 2013, large-scale production conducted at the far larger Rocky Flats plant, which reached upwards of 1,000 to 2,000 per year during the Cold War, that's quite a lot, halted in 1989 after the FBI and the Environmental Protection Agency raided and closed the facility over a series of environmental safety violations. According to the Center for Arms Control and Non-Proliferation, plutonium pits, which are present in all of America's estimated nuclear weapons, typically have a lifespan of 100 years or more. However, they are also subject to gradual degradation and corrosion, thereby potentially affecting their efficiency over time. The 80 plutonium pits per year requirement was introduced in the Trump administration's 2018 nuclear posture review. With Congress allocating $1.37 billion for the job in 2020. However, the Congressional Budget Office watchdog says spending to expand plutonium pit production capacity could balloon to up to $9 billion over the coming 5 years period, for they foresee war. This concludes the article. Reading on in Joel chapter 3. Assemble yourselves and come, O ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about where? In the valley of Jehoshaphat. In the Middle East, Jehoshaphat in the Hebrew is Yahweh Shaphat, which means Yahweh's judgment. Thither cause thy mighty ones, which are the angels, to come down, O Yahweh. Refer to 2 Ezra 13. Let the heathen be wakened, and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat, for there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. Put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come get you down, for the press is full, the fast overflow, for their wickedness is great. Multitudes, multitudes in the valley of decision. For the day of the Lord Yahweh is near in the valley of decision. So the day of the Lord Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushua is near in the valley of decision. And let us not forget that the Euphrates River, if it hasn't dried up already, is drying up rapidly to prepare the way for the kings of the east, according to Revelation, the 16th chapter. Okay. In other news from the RT, U.S. Fed Chair predicts recession. Jerome, oh Jerome, Jerome, oh Jerome. Jerome Powell, the head of the U.S. Central Bank, was pranked into a call with the fake Vladimir Zelensky. Look at this goddamn Edomite, man. It says U.S. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell predicted a recession, which is obvious. Just look at the yield curve. And acknowledged the central bank's role, and we've been saying this, everybody knows this. Unless you live on the rock, it says role in creating it in a candid conversation with celebrated Russian prankster Pavan and Lexus, whom he believed to be Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky. The tricksters, whose real names are Vladimir Kuznetsov and Alexei Yarov shared several clips from their January chat with Powell on Thursday. A recession is almost as likely as very slow growth in 2023, Powell predicted, acknowledging, I think that's partly because of us having raised rates quite a bit. But this is what it takes to get inflation down. And what is inflation? Inflation is the general increase in the cost of goods and services due to the expansion of money supply within an economy. When the value of the currency deteriorates, hence the costs of goods and services increase. But you see, this money system is faith-based, it is fake, it is fiat. Okay, Babylonian money magic. And it receives its value externally, hence it is extrinsic. It is not intrinsic like real monies, which is gold, cattle, silver, and land. And the global public has been gradually shifting away, and in some cases rapidly, shifting away from the use of the world leading global reserve currency. Read on to say what we need is a period of slower growth, which is to say low velocity, which is the flow of money within an economy. If there is no velocity, little to no velocity within an economy, then its GDP will shrink, because velocity reflects a nation's GDP, gross domestic product or production, whatever you want to call it. What we need is a period of slower growth so that the economy can cool off, so the labor market can cool off, so that wages can cool off. That's how inflation comes down. The central banker continued, it can be painful, but we don't know of any painless way for inflation to come down. But guess what? A hyper depression is coming. Powell revealed that 2 more rate hikes were already baked into the market, and that even more could follow, even while admitting the Fed had raised its rates historically sharply last year to get to the place where we are now. Amid last year's punishing rate hikes, however, Powell had seemed unconcerned with skeptics' recession predictions, insisting the markets were well positioned to withstand tighter monetary policy. They gotta keep their friends in high places good, you know. What the rich men are gonna howl. Read James the 5th chapter. Aside from inflation, the main issues imperiling the U.S. economy were the conflict in Ukraine, instability in China, and the debt ceiling, which they just increased the debt ceiling. Powell told the pranksters. He repeatedly apologized to the fake Zelensky for being unable to do more to support the Ukrainian war effort, explaining that he had limited ways to shift economic policy in Kyiv's favor, and that this was the Treasury's job. By the way, the Fed borrows their money from the Treasury. There was a saying by this guy, Marco Polo, how war fuels their treasury. I think his name was Ahmed, something like that. But you brothers and few sisters that watch the series know what I'm talking about. I may leave it in the description box. But anyway, reading on, it says, as Fox Zelensky wrapped up the call with a request for a printing press, Powell joked that the Fed had won, but kept it in the basement, and the pair shared a chuckle over the possibility of building a Federal Reserve Bank in Kyiv. That is funny. A Fed spokesperson reassured the public that no sensitive or confidential information was discussed with the hoaxers. The matter has been referred to appropriate law enforcement, and out of respect for their efforts, we won't be commenting further. Of course, they told Axios without elaborating, on what law the fake Zelensky or the real Powell were supposed to have broken. Povan and Lexus have pranked dozens of Western politicians and celebrities in recent years, impersonating a broad range of public figures from Russian President Vladimir Putin to environmental activist Greta Thunberg. That concludes the article. Let's get one more scripture and conclude the lesson. This is Ezekiel chapter 7, verse 19. They shall cast their silver in the streets, and their gold shall be removed. Because eventually the time will come when people's money will be worthless, because they're going to introduce the chip. Everything will be digital, completely digital. Okay, it says, the silver and their gold shall not be able to deliver them in the day of the wrath of the Lord Yahweh. They shall not satisfy their souls, neither fill their bowels, their minds. Their money won't be able to comfort their minds. Only the fear of the Lord is able to comfort the mind of a man. As it is written, wisdom and knowledge shall be the stability of thy time, the strength of salvation. The fear of the Lord is his treasure. The fear of the Lord is an Israelite elect man's treasure. Because 2/3, they don't fear the Lord. And the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom and knowledge. Okay, and knowledge of the holy is understanding. It boils back down to the fear of the Lord. It says, and they shall not satisfy their souls, neither fill their bowels, because it is the stumbling block of their iniquity. So their gold and silver will be the stumbling block of their iniquity and their destruction. So with that, I'll conclude this lesson here. The Lord's doing was edifying to the elect. This has been another in the news. And I say shalom to the elect. Until the next Lord's willing.